Hello. It has been another year, and once again, I'm going to go through everything I made in 2023. I really like last year's video. I wasn't really planning on making another one until I went through and compiled all of the stuff that I had made, and I'm just going to apologize in advance. It is almost twice as many things as last year, so I'm going to do my best to keep this under an hour. Uh, I don't know, but the basic premise here is that I have a blog that I post drawings to called Doodle.zone, and um, usually I will draw something and then later try to make it in 3D, animate it, do something with it. Um, Sometimes it's just I draw a dumb thing and it doesn't turn into anything. That happens a lot too. But that's kind of the basic premise here. So let's get into it. So the first thing, I was still at the beginning of last year, or still this year, but at the beginning of the year, I was still working on a lot of this like ski resort stuff. I had made this chalet. I made a entire fake ski trail map for this specific thing, which was pretty fun. But I kind of stopped here. I made a snowcat and didn't really do anything with that. I just had fun making it. And I was still kind of thinking about like, what would a full resort look like if I were to make that? And so the there's me more drawings of a guy snowboarding. So I actually made the resort or started to make this resort. And this was kind of fun to figure out like how do I put a ton of trees um, in a resort. And I had started making a chairlift system and figuring out kind of how that could all look. And then way down here is that chalet from a couple pictures ago. So it was massive. Like this is the biggest Blender thing I had ever made, and it was a miracle that it worked at all, or it didn't just completely crash whenever I tried to open it. Um, but yeah, it was kind of just like trying to make an idea, seeing what it could look like, and moved on to drawing or working on this seagull guy that I had made a while ago and making him a snowboarding version of the seagull guy. And this was a bunch of stickers I drew for his snowboard, which I think is next. And the thing with this snowboard is I had figured out, or I'd kind of known how to do this, but I had never really tried making materials that had a bunch of different components to them. So there's like the underside of the board has, a thing that happens on snowboards is it gets scraped up pretty bad. So there's these kind of like stripes of these. Anyway, I figured out how to make that, and I thought that was really cool. So I made this snowboard specifically to try making these materials and just kind of figure out how that could look. And then I rigged the snowboard for this seagull guy specifically, and I rigged that guy too. And the whole thing was that I was trying to, make the ski resort specifically to put this seagull guy on it doing something. And what actually ended up doing is I only ever animated the seagull just kind of doing a big ollie. And that's kind of where I left it. So, I think maybe at that point I was sick of winter because the last year's winter was very long and awful. But anyway, I thought this turned out pretty cool, and I just never really did anything beyond this. I'm gonna go back to here. So these are the three heads, and I'm gonna be probably talk about these a lot later. But at a couple years ago, I started drawing these little heads, and the heads were just little characters, I guess. And at some point last year, I realized like, I've drawn 60 of these little heads. There's tons of these little things, and kept count and just kept making more. And so there'll be more as we go. But I was like, I just decided I'm going to make 100 of these and then stop or do something with it. And so these are the first three, and there'll be more as we go. So this is the chairlift that I wanted to model for that ski resort, but never really did. But it was kind of fun to draw. 3 more heads. I still really like this one. Kind of like Zeke from Bob's Burgers, I guess. And then after kind of not giving up, but stopping working on the resort stuff, I was like, all right, I'm going to go back to making some sort of character. And I really liked this shark guy that I made, because I think the thing I started to do making these characters is like, I wanted them to be more exaggerated, like the proportions to be weirder is kind of where I ended up. And so this shark is a very extreme example of that, but I wanted the legs to kind of be noodlier and long, bigger forearms, kind of weirder shapes. I never made it, but I thought this would be fun to make in 3D and figure out how to make, the mouth and animate that. But also, good excuse to draw a weird, a weird lifted truck thing. So this was, I don't remember why I started doing this sandwich place, but I drew this big sign of, it's kind of, Seattle had a bunch of these like signs that were like, neon or just like lit signs that looked really nice. And I always liked those. So I drew this sign, and then I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to take that drawing and then I'm going to draw the rest of the restaurant. And it was just like a weird little building that I wanted to try doing. So then I started making it, and I started with the sign and just kind of blocked in a lot of what the building looked like. And these are cars I had made a long time ago. And then I just kind of kept going. And that, I guess that's the theme for all of this, the city stuff is I liked this, and then I kept going. And then it just kind of spiraled from there, for better or worse. But I thought this turned out really cool. And it was, again, just like I wanted to make this little scene. And a thing that I had wanted to get better at, I guess, was environmental design stuff. I don't know. I always find it fascinating in games and stuff where the environmental art stuff is, I didn't know how to make it good, I guess is kind of how to put it, is I knew what I wanted it to look like, but it was hard to kind of achieve a consistent look to it. And I spent a lot of time working on it, and some things did turn out, but it was always very difficult to kind of piece together. So I thought this turned out nice. A couple more heads. This is Caitlin, and she came downstairs dressed like this, and I told her she looked like a cartoon character, and she laughed, and so I was like, yeah, no. She looks exactly like this is the most accurate drawing I have ever made of Caitlin. She wears pants like this, big chunky sweater. It's still funny to me, even though this was from March last year. It's just a cash register. And here, this is where the odyssey of this arcade begins. This is actually a real pinball table called Fishtails that I really like. It is just a fishing themed pinball table. There's like a boat in the center of the play field, and you kind of hit it up and around this boat. Anyway, great pinball table. Love it. Just felt like drawing it. And then I just kind of started thinking about what if I made an arcade or like modeled in it, kind of in the style of that restaurant that I just showed you. That I'm just going to make an arcade. I can make the pinball tables and just try to make a nice little space. So, oh, this side tangent. This is from my Animal Crossing house. This is all of the arcade stuff, and so I actually went and found all of the pinball tables and all of the things, just because it was anyway. Very proud of my little arcade. I started blocking together like that same thing. So that's almost exactly what I had drawn. And you can see it's still pretty basic, like the pinball tables are not. They're just kind of the idea of a pinball table. This arcade cabinet is still just kind of faked in. But it was like pretty fun to get to this point and be like, oh, this could actually maybe turn into something or feel more fleshed out. So I just kind of kept going. And I made this Punchpocalypse 2 arcade cabinet. And it's so dumb. Time to get punched. But I'm zooming in here because I specifically... This, like, the way this looks, like the arcade cabinet, you know, the joystick and buttons, like, I think that looks exactly the way that I envision those things. And I'm just, like, happy with how that turned out, because that's exactly, you know, how those look and feel to me when I think about an arcade cabinet. So I started drawing some pinball table ideas. I think I only ever made 2 of these, just because, as we'll see, got a little sidetracked doing a lot of other stuff. But I made Launch Vector and Hyper Object. I think I was going to do Brain Freeze next, but anyway, these are just like jokey pinball table ideas. And then, yeah, we'll see them in a second here. Couple more heads. This is just a van. I posted about this, about how the first van, well, the first car I wanted in high school was actually like an Econoline touring van for the band I was in, but my band was awful. There was no way we were ever going to tour. None of us really knew how to play anything, barely a band, but I always thought a van would be really cool. This is a hover truck. Just, you know, a thing you draw. This, I remember I drew this guy taking a picture. I know specifically I was playing Psychonauts 2 when I was drawing this, because this looks a little bit like a character from Psychonauts 2, just the way that their proportions are. They all kind of have very strange feet. Or just proportions, but I always think of that when I see that drawing. But here's this, the exterior of that, the pinball place. And I've started to expand outward. I think I had only made the one other pinball table, and there'll be a close up of that. But as we'll see, I just basically started on this pinball place and slowly kind of expanded outward, blocking in other buildings and making this whole city until completely lost my mind, but we'll get there. So here's Launch Vector, which is, you know, it's still kind of roughed in, but it looks more like a pinball table now, which is fun. Here's another Penrose triangle. It's going to be a lot of these, and we'll explain it later, but a lot of Penrose triangles. Here's the frog guy doing a kickflip. So this, I had made the other pinball table named Hyper Object. And Hyper Object, it's a cool word, but it is actually, it's a book about how the concept, there are some concepts, like the concept of climate change is so big and so complex that it's hard to understand all at once. Anyway, not to get into that, but that's what that is. So here's the this is where it kind of gets into me drawing something and then immediately like, oh, that is the building. And then there it is. I was working on it and then I drew that. And this was me, the Big Bean is the coffee shop next door to the Half Tilt pinball place. And so it's slow. And then I think at that point, I also put the sandwich place back here because they're all kind of a set. They're all at the same scale. This is a drawing of a CRT TV with a GameCube. And this is Metroid Prime, of course. And when I posted this on, all these doodles I post on Mastodon, and I got my first weird reply guy because I made a joke about how all these TVs are 300 pounds and this little flap with the inputs is always missing or broken or whatever. And this guy's like, well, actually, they weren't all 300 pounds. And I'm like, dude, it's a joke. I don't know. People exaggerate sometimes because it's fun. Anyway, I love the GameCube. That's the main takeaway here. A couple more heads. Yep. This is I think I had watched a video about, I think it's 5-point perspective, which is just a way to draw like a super fish-eyed thing like this. And I wanted to try doing this. I don't know if I had, maybe this is the first time I drew the Peppo's pizza place. Drew the Peppo logo here, or I guess that's just Peppo. This is like like Surge, it's just like a dumb thing. And I thought it would be fun to draw one named Turbo Glunk. That's it. Another bird person kind of just hanging out in a car. Sometimes I will write a thing on like a bumper sticker or something that means something. Sometimes it's just shapes that kind of look like letters, and I don't always remember which one it is. This is a mechanic's place that I was going to put into that city. The city is called Dogburg, by the way. And I actually started making this place. I never finished the full building, but I did kind of make the garage. And I put, this guy was the main mechanic at this place. But I kind of roughed in the garage part. And then because this was facing kind of the wrong way, I just decided I didn't really need to ever finish it. So I never did. It's just a drawing of stuff. As you'll notice, the eagle-eyed watchers here, that's a Punchpocalypse 2 machine right here. It's just dumb. Okay, so this is, I had made this Suzuki Carry style Kei Truck years ago. This is one of the first things I made in Blender, and I had animated this little truck, and I was like, that truck would actually, I could probably 3D print that. Like that would probably, it's chunky enough. I would probably have to, clean up the models and, reorganize it a little bit, but I probably could figure out a way to 3D print this. So, I did. I kind of remastered the model a little bit, cleaned it all up. It was sloppy just because I did it quickly, but I had to kind of really clean up and reorganize all of this so that it could be basically pulled apart and laid flat like this so that it could be 3D printed. And so I have a couple around here, but this was then I printed a prototype of the truck. And this, it took forever to figure out all the like little details around like, oh, the truck bed can't be printed, is one big piece because this like crevice here is too hard to whatever. It was a lot of trial and error, and I kind of figured out eventually how it all needed to be completely kind of pulled apart. And the fun thing was not only I made this for me, but I took the printed one and I painted the whole thing. So this is the And I have one. Let me grab it. So the actual size one is not. It's not huge, but here's the final one, and this is the painted one. But that was super fun to do, even though painting it was tedious. But the what I did, and I posted this online, and people were like, oh, you should send me the STL, is the 3D printing file that people ask for when they want to print their own. And I'm like, okay, sure. And I also printed one that's twice as big. So that's to scale. It's huge. That one took a couple days to print. But anyway, I put it on this site called Printables, which is like it's not really a social network, but it's a huge repository of 3D printable things. And I posted the truck, and over 3,000 people have downloaded it, which is it's still amazing to me that yeah. So because so many people have downloaded this, I actually earned a bunch of free 3D printing plastic from this place. So I like, that's cool. And also like people posted their own prints of my little truck. So this person in Seattle posted this one with a bird, which is great. And there's one with the squirrel. But yeah, it's that was really cool. And I am glad I posted it, just because I wasn't really sure what to do. I mean, I wanted this for me mostly, but to see other people print it and think it's great, or they modified it to make the wheels work, and yeah, that was super cool. Back to some doodles. This is just I don't know what this is, science museum, something. There is that guy from the auto shop. His name is Ray. I guess I retconned his name to be Ray. I guess me getting hit in the face with a can of soup. Not sure why. It's fun to draw, though. A couple more heads. This is, I think, nearing the end of my odyssey with with Dogburg. But I made this whole cabin for Milton. There's a lake in the city. I spent all this time working on this lake and adding all this detail, which was fun. Do that. And then this is kind of the culmination of all of this. Was I made this kind of shot that I guess is a tracking shot that zooms all the way out from the pinball place, and then just kind of showing the whole city. And I had made this like entire thing behind there. I remade this gas station. I made that years ago. And I remade this gas station, and I kind of kept going and adding buildings, and I added all this stuff. And I think at a certain point I was just like, not like, what am I doing? But it was more just like, I don't know where this ends. I don't know. I'm not making a game. I'm not even animating anything in it. And it was fun. It was fun to work on, but it was just at a certain point, I'm just like, I don't know what to do. Eventually I added a skate park. This is kind of the last thing I did, is I added a skate park over here. And again, I was just like, I don't really know. And this coincided with, this was in like May or June, and I had already kind of started getting burnt out on streaming, because the whole thing was, I was streaming every Saturday for almost 3 years. Just like I would draw something, and then I'd, stream trying to build or animate something in Blender, and it was really fun, and just kind of hit a wall, I think, where it wasn't really working for me anymore. And so I just stopped. Didn't, It was a lot of different things. This is really dramatic. Sorry. But I just decided I wasn't getting anything out of it anymore. And it was kind of like, it was fun. There was a couple people people would still stop by. Like this guy, Cryogi, was always there. That was fun. But, my friend Micah would stop by or whatever it was. And they'd be like, oh, what is this? But then I'd still be sitting there for 3 hours on a Saturday working on a thing. And at a certain point, it was just like, I had other stuff I needed to be doing on Saturday. It turns out I just was busy I don't know. So it was kind of a weird thing because I actually have been spending a lot more time woodworking, and there's the Penrose triangle that I kept talking about that was always supposed to be the logo for this business that I've started. And business is in very generous air quotes. I've done some custom pieces for some people and kind of started trying to do this more, but it's still kind of a little bit of a just figuring it out type of project. And I have had a lot of fun working on it, and it is of course I love woodworking, but the crux of it is I really just kind of ran out of time. Having a dedicated 3-hour chunk every Saturday to doing Blender stuff that I'm mostly just kind of doing for myself. It was fun, but it was also just like I had other stuff I needed to do, and so that's kind of the main reason I stopped. One of the, I guess, main reasons I stopped streaming was just feeling like I needed to use that time differently, and that's kind of where it ended up. So yeah. So back to drawings. It was really hot this summer, and I thought it doesn't really work as a comic strip, but I thought this was funny, just because it was melting all summer. But yeah. Anyway, I've been drawing a lot of vehicles, and this was kind of a drawing where I was just like, I keep wanting to push the drawings of cars and these characters to be more cartoony, just because I like the way they look, and I want them to be more expressive and weird. And it's kind of a fun challenge when I can draw things in perspective and big shapes, but can I push them into be bent and weird and more cartoony? So that was kind of the push here, and I kind of been doing this a lot. This is Caitlin asked me if I was still driving my cranky car one day when I was not in a good mood. And yes, I was. And this is my cranky car, and that's me driving around in it. Stupid. Here's another. This is the Honda Acti. And I was actually going to make a version of this van and 3D print it like this, or make it so I could print another tiny car. And just kind of, I don't know, I had moved on and didn't really feel like going through that whole process again right away. So I did not end up making that, but maybe I will. It's just a random spaceship. I think I wasn't really sure what this big wheel was, so it then turned into maybe they're space hamsters. And so I kind of drew this space hamster a few times, and there's another space ham doodle later. This was June 15th, I guess, that's Doodle Zone's birthday. So this was the 6th year of Doodle Zone, which is I can't believe I mean, there's no reason I would stop, but I'm still kind of surprised that it has been 6 years. Um, but I still really like it. I think it's kind of a fun constraint to only draw in one color. So yeah. So that drawing from a couple weeks, or I guess weeks ago, but the drawing of the car kind of careening to the side. Some guys saw that on Mastodon and they reached out to me. And so Tony and Kyle are these two guys. They wanted to make a Playdate game. And a Playdate, if you're unfamiliar, is a tiny game console. It is a tiny yellow console that has a little crank on it. And so this thing, it is it's just a weird little console. And I kind of had wanted to make a game for this, but wasn't really sure what to do. And so Tony and Kyle were like, well, we want to make a game where there's kind of a bus that can change shape and, be wacky. It's called Wacky Bus is the name of this project. And so I was like, yeah, I love drawing little cars and could make a weird bus. And, so that's kind of, a lot of this is kind of out of order because I've been working on Wacky Bus stuff since June, kind of on and off, just because, people's schedules, whatever. So I'm just going to put all the Wacky Bus stuff together, even though it happened over the course of, 6 months. But so this was kind of my first concept art, let's say, for Wacky Bus. And the idea was just like, it's a kind of a isometric view of a highway and there's just a bunch of crap going on and the bus is trying to keep it together. So these are just some props because I kind of started making just the art. And so this is a bunch of different trees and these are, we were going to have actual little people waiting at bus stops. And these are just a little bunch of little characters that would be waiting for a bus. And so this is where it gets weird in a good way. I actually was like, Tony and Kyle were like, oh, it's probably going to be a pixel art because the play date is one, it's 1 bit. So it's just black or white and it's all pixel art technically. And I was like, I want to make the bus very expressive and squishy and weird. And I don't have a lot of experience doing pixel art animation stuff. So I was like, well, what if I make the game in Blender? I'd make all the assets in Blender and I figure out how to basically render it out, the bus and all the animated pieces, and then get them into, this like 1 bit look. And so I actually tried doing this or started this. And here's an early version where I actually had made trees and all the props were in here. And the idea was that this is a slightly different thing, but basically I made materials that are specifically black or white. And then when it is rendered, it is just basically squished down into pixel art. And so I got a bus and like these cones, and these are my drawings of the trees. It's kind of a weird combo of things. Oh, this is just some ideas we were trying to figure out what are the different ways the bus transforms. This was an idea where it kind of in the air, maybe it goes into like a flat flying mode where it kind of jumps and it squishes and then you can kind of float. I don't know. We actually kind of bailed on that idea. Another one was like a stilts mode, where it kind of had Inspector Gadget legs that, what those are. It's another idea that we eventually were like, well, that doesn't really make any sense. So we didn't go with it. But this is, I made the bus and I rigged it up so the bus could be animated and squished. And I could turn you can turn the wheels and a level of detail that's frankly ridiculous for how small the bus actually is on the play date. Like it's anyway, I wanted to figure it out because I thought it would be fun to make the bus very, the animation really fluid, even though that's kind of unexpected for a game on a play date, which is not very powerful. So this is like the first animation test that we had where I had rendered out the street kind of moving and then, animated a turn where the bus is kind of turning back and forth. And one weird thing that we figured out really quickly was that the way I had animated this bus was too slow. Like it's way too and when you're playing it and there's a bunch of stuff in the way, you're like switching directions really quickly. So having the bus kind of sway and be really swimmy didn't look right. It didn't feel good. And that was kind of an interesting thing to figure out. So this is the first animation test of getting this running on the playdate. And then this is now much faster. So this is the bus and it has a few different states where it can jump. And there's the jump. The jump had to be sped up a lot too. But the turn is a lot tighter. And we've got some of my other trucks and cars in there. And this is just like picking up pedestrians or passengers, I guess. And then, if you hit stuff, they go flying out of of the bus. And then I animated a little, there is the, trying to figure out like pickups, like Mario Kart style pickups. And so the idea was to have a drone just kind of fly in off screen. And then, you have to jump up and get the pickup from the guy. So I animated this drone and this is what it looks like in game where they fly in. You can see we're still working on a lot of the UI stuff. But this is kind of the idea. So you have a power up for a limited time. You can always jump. And this is just kind of showing a couple ideas and how they could fit. This is like a rocket mode. I made like speed lines. Anyway, my favorite thing so far is I drew. The joke has been that the bus works for or is a part of the Wacky Transit Authority, and this is your boss, and he hates you. He just absolutely hates your guts, always mad at you. And so I drew this guy in July. It's just like, oh, here's a cranky old guy who hates the bus or hates you. I don't know. And so this is the administrator, as he is known. And so just like a couple weeks ago, I was like, what would be really fun is to make a pixel art version of the administrator that kind of pops in and says, hey, what are you doing? Like, get back here, whatever. And so I animated the administrator. So here he is. But this is really fun. I had never really done pixel art animation stuff. And I've been using Aseprite for, a lot of the GIF or, animation stuff so far. But I really like how this turned out. And so here it is in context, like on the screen, where you're just, he kind of pops in and says like, what are you doing? Get back here. And then, like I said, we're still figuring out the UI stuff. But yeah, it's coming along. And this is just some key art that I made. The Wacky Bus has I put a face on the bus, but I don't know if we haven't really figured out if the bus is the character or if you're driving the bus or what. I think it's funny if the bus is like struggling and the administrator guy hates the bus. I don't know. I just think that's stupid and kind of funny. But yeah. So back to some drawings. This is just a concrete truck. I don't know. Just a kettle. There's another space hamsters. This is a one of the water bottles from a hamster cage. obviously. This is, so I have made now a few of these drawings that I think are kind of part of a series in a way, where there's just like, it's not really an optical illusion, but it's kind of like a knot or something weird with a bunch of cars. And they're kind of fun to me to draw because the perspective is just like, just wild, and trying to figure out how to draw, here's the afternoon logo, but trying to figure out how to draw something this complex and kind of make it all fit together. And there's a couple of these, and I have had a lot of fun trying to figure out how to draw them, just because they're kind of weird and fun to look at. There's a big guy pointing somewhere. So I think this is where I decided, like, okay, I'm just going to do the rest of the heads. I was like off. How many is that? 12? I was like, I had 10 or 12 left. I'm just going to just do the rest of them, get it over with, move on. So these are the final 12. And this is my mom, actually. I drew her, so I thought that'd be kind of funny. And then when I was making the grid, I forgot I needed to draw my other cat, Ramona, so I drew her. But what happened, so this was in July, I think, middle of July. And I was like, what would be cool is to take all 100 of these and put them on a big grid and get a print made of all 100 of these. And there's another thing that I just wanted for me. I was like, it'd be kind of cool if I could sell this. I don't know if anyone would buy it, whatever. But I want one. I want one for me. I don't know if I can. Here it is behind me on the wall. And I wanted this print. And so I took all 100 and arranged them in this giant grid. And just because of how big they are, I was like, this print should be 18 by 18. Well, turns out 18 by 18 is a very weird size that you can't just get printed. And I was calling all over town, and people were like, look at me like I had 3 arms. They're like, you can't do that. Like that, what? Eventually I found a screen printing place in Northeast Minneapolis. And I told the guy, I was like, oh, I really want this specific paper, because all the drawings on Doodle Zone have a very slight texture to them. And I just like wanted it to be, have a texture, not just be, that perfect poster paper that does not have any tooth to it. So the guy was like, yeah, well, you bring your own paper and we'll print on it. And I was like, great, sure. It was like weirdly expensive because it's, a custom screen printing job. I bring this paper up to this place, and it takes a few weeks. And the guy calls me. He's like, okay, yeah, we got your posters done. And I go up there, bring them out to my car, and they printed it on the wrong side of the paper. And this is like hundreds of dollars to get all these printed for whatever reason. You printed them on the back side of this paper that looked bad. It looked like weird. And I was just like, I can't believe that. Like, after all, this is like months of me looking around, and then it comes to this, and I'm like, I can't believe it. So I go back in there, and I'm like, what? I don't, what happened? And the guy's like, oh yeah, we were actually talking about it here. And we were like, we were going to call you, but we just figured you wanted the side with the like worst texture. And I'm like, I was so mad. Anyway, the stupid thing was, the guy was like, well, I was like, well, if I brought you different paper, could you just reprint this? Since they clearly screwed him up. And the guy was like, well, no, because I was like, I'm just like, I don't know what to do, because I have now wasted a bunch of money and time trying to just get basically one printed for me and one printed for my mom. And eventually I was like, well, okay, if I bring you guys a screen, would you guys, or can I buy the screen you did to print this with? Or, and they're like, well, if you brought a screen, we'll expose it for free, because I don't have all that screen printing stuff. Anyway, I was like, you know what? I've screen printed before. I haven't done it in a long time. I can get the stuff. I can get a big squeegee and some hinges or whatever. And so I was like, okay, fine. So I go, they make a screen for me. I set up this whole thing in my garage, and the prints just don't turn out. A lot of these like little details, and this is partially my fault, but some of these details are so small that some of these faces just would not print. And at that point, I just gave up and was like, you know what? I'm done. This is good enough. I'm not selling it. This is, just for me. But I admitted defeat, and I am just done. So I now have a couple of these, and I have the one over here, and I gave one to my mom, but just super frustrating. And I was just, it's one of those things where I talk to people about this, and they're like, what is wrong with you? And I'm like, well, I wanted it to be a specific thing, and I kind of did all of this stuff to try to get it to be the thing I wanted. And the fact that I can't or could not figure it out, it's just a bummer. Anyway, here's a close up on some of these. Some of them turned out great. This is my friend Ben's dad. There's Caitlin, me, Frank, and Ramona here. There's I still really like these little heads, and I'm, glad I went through all that, I guess, but it would have been a lot cooler if it just had turned out the way I wanted. But anyway, this is when I started a band. That's part of the other reason that I have been busy and didn't want to stream anymore, as I started a band. We still don't have a name, but it's a lot of fun to play drums and guitar in a band. Just a walkie-talkie. This is, I don't know why I put this in here, but this is actually another Penrose triangle. This is in the game Viewfinder. And in Viewfinder, the whole gimmick of the game is that you pick up pictures or take pictures, and you place them in the world, and then they become real. And I thought this was really cool, because you take this drawing, and then all of a sudden this triangle becomes a thing you can just walk on, and it goes, into the disc. I just thought this was cool. I didn't make this, but a cool thing. This is another thing from Globo, the dumb corporation that I made. It's just a stupid thing. This is a thing where I put something like this in here because I think it's funny, but it's that's kind of it. Another guy just sitting there. Weird vehicle. There's a whole tag on Doodle Zone that's just vehicles, because I now have drawn so many different vehicles that it's a whole category. There's a haunted telephone, I think. I don't know. This is a drawing I don't think I posted, but I think I drew it. I said, you know what, that's maybe too stupid, and I didn't post it to Doodle Zone, and then I went to sleep. But there you go. Another guy sleeping on a thing. This was I had an idea to make a giant octopus for my front yard for Halloween. And just paint the giant pieces of this giant octopus. And I never did. I think what happened was I had to get some wisdom teeth out on Halloween, and I decided I don't care anymore. So I did not. Maybe next year I will make the giant octopus for my front yard. Another delivery vehicle. Just stuff falling out. This is another kind of. This one took me a few days just because there's so many little pieces that I spent all this time on this thing. It turned out pretty cool, but this is this is just people worshiping a glowing cube. I don't know. Just a guy. I think mopeds are really cool. I almost got one. or I was really considering getting a moped in Seattle, but I know my friend Micah had one, and he said he had a really hard time getting up the hills in Seattle. So that kind of maybe cooled me off on them a little bit. But this is a vendor wearing a Michael Jordan jersey for some reason. I don't know. Here's another giant octopus and a shipping thing. This is I was trying to figure out some shapes for I was gonna carve a giant wood thing for above our fireplace. I was doodling a couple ideas, and this lower right one is actually what I ended up doing. And so I took that and made a giant carved one out of maple, and I made a video about it. So this is the other thing I started doing, is I started a YouTube channel for the woodworking stuff that I've been working on. And this is a video that did surprisingly well, I guess, because it's just me carving this giant wave. And it's kind of fun to watch, kind of relaxing, just a interesting process. But yeah, I will try to link to that. I don't know how to do that on YouTube, but yeah. This is when my iPad was dying, and I was very frustrated about it. But I got a new one, and it's much better, of course. This is the Peppo delivery vehicle. It's just like a Honda Civic, and I really liked the way this turned out. And there's more from the Peppo cinematic universe, I guess, later, but it's just a burger I drew for some reason. Some headphones. This is another drawing that took a while just because of how complex it was. And the cool thing about, like, this drawing turned out really cool. I'm happy with it, but then a guy that follows me on Mastodon messaged me and was like, "Hey, I'm actually animating a 3D version of it." And so he basically remade my doodle, but animated a 3D version of it, it's so cool. I am very impressed with how much little details that he captured. And he posted some other pictures that, this card's backing up back here. Of just like his name Marty is on that, and like there's just Marty Crownover is the guy that made this, and I love it. I was going to try to make something like this maybe, but I honestly had kind of forgotten about it and moved on, and it was just really cool to see this. Anyway. I made a second video that's up on YouTube, and this one did not do well at all because it's specifically about Blender, and it's about scanning a room and then, visualizing furniture in the room, because sometimes you need to know how big roughly something should be. And for me, as a visual person, I have found it really helpful to be able to basically prototype something at scale in the room before you have to do anything. And so that was a fun video to make, but almost nobody watched it, and that's fine. Whatever. This is a guy eating an apple maybe in the rain. Not sure. As I mentioned, I had to get my wisdom teeth out, and so this is a self-portrait of me the day after I got my wisdom teeth out, where my face was very swollen and I had an ice pack on a lot. Yeah. And then I was basically just hanging out on the couch for a week, and I played all of the new Spider-Man game. And I literally 100%ed Spider-Man 2 while I was sitting on the couch. So, yeah. This is just a Akira slide. Just that I don't know, felt like drawing one. This is a drawing of this. Well, the second computer we had when I was growing up was a Gateway, and we convinced my dad to get the biggest monitor possible somehow. I'm sure we said, "Oh, it'll be good for work." I don't know, but this giant monitor weighed so much and was so big it didn't really fit on the desk in our basement. And I always loved the monitor because it was enormous for the time, but I always thought it was funny that it kind of it didn't fit, but it was, it was still really cool. And then on here, this is the Windows 95 pinball, what's it called, like Space Adventure, something like that. Anyway, this is I kind of got thinking again about the Peppo delivery car and what the driver could look like. And so I drew this character and was like, I had made the Honda Civic a while ago. I had made that maybe a year or two ago. And I was like, well, I could just take the Honda Civic, put a pizza slice on it and then figure out, something to do with it. And so that's what I did. Here's that driver again with a lot of pizzas. And so here is the Honda Civic. And the thing I wanted to figure out, and it's nearly done, I guess, is that I wanted to figure out how to texture this pizza slice in a way that was interesting. And so this is kind of loosely based on there's a new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie that has a really interesting aesthetic to it, where it's all kind of painted and kind of scribbly. And I thought that looked really cool. So I was trying to make it look kind of like that, or at least a version of that. And that was kind of a weird problem to figure out, because I started hand painting it and then I actually switched to making the texture the way I normally do. Anyway, but so I also started making the driver guy, and I was in the middle of rigging this guy when I started doing this video, or started planning to do this. So the character guy is not rigged yet, but I've kind of started piecing together the rig and figuring that out, because I think for the most part, he's just going to be driving this. So he's just kind of going to be swerving around. But yeah, so this is Procreate came out with an animation app called Procreate Dreams. And I wanted to try animating something in that. And Procreate Dreams is it's not great. I think it's missing a lot of things that would make animation in this style easier to do. I think the UI is very kind of obtuse and difficult to navigate, difficult to kind of work this way. So I don't know when I will get back into it, but it was kind of fun to try to animate this little loop of Frank hearing the word eat, because he gets very excited. This is a camper van. I posted about this, but I knew someone growing up that had one, and it smelled awful on the inside. And they had it open in their driveway once, and I went in and I was like, what? I declined to go camping with them because it smelled that bad. There's a guy reselling a sound bar, I guess. Anyway, no refunds. But so the last piece here is me. I had started animating the delivery guy, kind of driving in a, out of control way. And I thought it would be fun. When I've animated things in the past, I have tried different ways of doing it. And this time I specifically am trying to do more of what they call a blocking pass, where you kind of rough in the animation, and then some people call it blocking plus, where you kind of take the blocking phase and kind of really push the poses. And I, you know, just trying to figure it out. And I think this, even for a rough idea, I think this is turning out pretty cool. I still have to texture and, model the rest of this little city block, but I think it'll be cool whenever I get around to finishing it. The funny thing to me is I actually had to make this like circular, or it was a big cylinder of the road or the city. And so it's just a chunk of city repeating around this big cylinder. And that was kind of fun to figure out. And now I just kind of animate over top of that. But I still have to kind of go through and draw the rest of the owl, as the joke goes. Yeah. This is we're near the end here, but this is I had a dream about a game called Bug Game that everyone was obsessed with, and I had no idea how the game worked, and everyone was mad at me because I kept complaining about it. So I made the character select screen for Bug Game. I don't know. It's dumb. And then I think the last one here is this doodle of another. It's that same city block with the Peppo thing on the corner. And I thought it would be kind of fun to try to make a kind of repeating puzzle-like thing. And this is there's an isometric grid in Linnea, the app I draw in. And anyway, I think it turned out pretty cool. I drew this top chunk and just kind of rotated it around. But yeah, turned out fun. I think that would look cool in 3D or animated somehow. But anyway, I will probably actually this is the thing I'm most excited about finishing at some point here. So yeah. Anyway, that's it. This did actually take about an hour, and so if you stuck around this long, thanks, I guess. I'm not really sure what's next, I guess. Working on Wacky Bus has been really fun, and I'm sure I'm just going to keep plugging away at that, but I don't know. I've had fun getting back into character stuff and the car things with the Peppo guy, and like I said, not doing the streams every Saturday has been kind of interesting because it kind of took off. It both took the pressure off having to come up with something or work on something every week, but then it also kind of removed any impetus to keep working on something if an idea doesn't, is difficult or it hasn't gone anywhere. So, I don't know. I think maybe I'm hoping not streaming every week will kind of free me up to just work on a thing when I'm excited about it or I want to try something new. And, yeah. So, like I said, thanks for sticking around. I will see you next year, I guess. Yeah. Thanks.